All right, team, we're now live streaming. So, councillors, if I could just have your attention. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Strategy and Operations Committee for the 24th of September. I've got a fairly big agenda today with a report back from Zeal, but more importantly, the Beach Bylaw. Good to see a number of people turn out today, obviously, to give us some feedback on that. I will move to the council blessing. We'll go through the agenda, and if you folk there haven't been made aware, we'll very quickly come up to public speaking as well. So item number 2 of the agenda is council blessing. As we deliberate on the issues before us, we trust that we will reflect positively on the communities we serve. Let us all seek to be effective and just, so that with courage, vision and energy, we provide positive leadership in a spirit of harmony and compassion. Item number 3 on the agenda is apologies. I'm not aware of any apologies. Tanika's none come through. So with that, I move on to item number 4 on the agenda, declarations of interest. No elected members have made me aware of any. I'm quick scan around the room. No. So then we move on to item number 5, public speaking time for items relating to the agenda. At the moment, we have what I can see is around 10 people public speaking. I'm reasonably flexible around the public speaking because I think it's a good part of democracy and hearing from our community. If you haven't spoken before at council, we allow 3 minutes for public speaking. With 10 of you here, that's half an hour if you stick to the 3 minutes and if there's no questions. If there's questions, we could be here for an hour or so on public speaking alone. So there'll be a timer that will go off. It'll give you an idea that we're close to winding up. And then if you could sort of summarise and close, then just stay at the podium. I'll open it up and ask if there's any questions from elected members for you, and at which point you can respond, and then we'll move on to the next speaker. I do ask that people approach the council respectfully and look forward to having good dialogue with you. So with that, I'm going to invite up Richard Good and Martin Bayton, I believe, together. Good morning. And
just be myself, thank you.
Okay.
So, Morena, Tina Koto, everybody, thank you for this opportunity. My name, I'll keep it very brief because I'm aware there's so many speakers. I'm Martin Bates. I'm representing a group of individuals from Te Horo Beach through to Peka, and we're really here to talk about the Beach Bylaw. If we could, I'm doing the slides, aren't I? Here we are. For full transparency, I'm also a documentary filmmaker, and I'm very concerned about this issue, and I think it deserves a documentary. Your vision, early on in all your paperwork, you've got a wonderful vision there. It talks about sustainability and our need to protect and improve the well-being of our land and waters. Sadly, I don't believe that's the case in your bylaw. I think it's woefully inadequate. I hope you pass it in today. I hope you don't send it out. It needs a great deal more work. Essentially, it appears to just be a rather lazy and complete referendum of beach users' wants. There's not a lot of impact assessments. There's not a lot of data. It's not suitable for purpose. I really believe that you have a chance here as a council to set the agenda for how the beaches are respected and used for the next 10 years. And all we end up with is kind of the existing one with a few little adjustments is fit for purpose. Well, my view is it's not fit for purpose. I want to give you an example. Just take this one little bit, which is the Peka to Te Horo Beach, where you say driving is remained allowed the whole length of this beach. So this is despite your own growth forecasts, despite the mission statement to protect and sustain. What does that actually mean? Because as far as we can see, this decision is not based on any scientific or empirical evidence. It's just based on a referendum of beach users. You can't see it very clearly on there, but there's an estuary just north of Peka there that everybody drives through, straight through. Let me go to the next slide and show you some. That's what the beach actually looks like. This is a family beach. This is what it looks like every day there. It's become a highway. You've done no data on what the usage of that beach is in terms of the number of drivers. There's been no data about what the growth expectations are. This beach has families on it, walking dogs with horses on there, children building sandcastles, and yet you allow cars to drive the entire length of the beach. As a result of this, we've got unbelievable acts of intimidation by drivers and bike riders. We've had assaults as local residents try to actually manage this beach on your behalf. We truly expect to see something much better in the documentation that came through, and we're bitterly disappointed. The bylaws must place more emphasis on protecting our fragile dunes and foreshore. This is a real seminal moment for the council to be able to grasp this issue. The next 10 years, our grandchildren are going to be using these beaches, and you're setting the rules for this. So I'll move on very quickly. More people, more traffic, more damage. So thank you. Kāpiti anō.
Thank you. Richard, just if you could remain there, and you did cut off there quite quickly at the end. I just wanted to check you did get through everything that you wanted to get through.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. As a fellow Tohoro Beach resident, welcome today. We've talked always by phone, and first time we've met in person. So good to see you here. Councillors, elected members, any questions?
I'm not Richard, I'm Martin.
Oh, Martin.
Richard's.
So hence why I didn't recognise.
So we haven't met.
Yep, so His Worship the Mayor.
Martin. I'm right, Martin? Just talking about the process, what we are going through now is opening up the possibility of this document as a statement of proposal and for the community to then come back to us with definite submissions. You got 1 month of the submission process, and then on the 26th of November, we'll have a full hearing here. So it's just triggering off the process. So are you understanding what I'm saying in terms of the process?
I believe the process is flawed. Because it's for your team to do the analysis. It's for your team to gather the data. It's for your teams to actually look at the impacts on the beach. It's not for the submission teams to do all that work. It's missing in this document. This document really is just as if you've gone to farmers and asked them how they want to use the rivers. It's absolutely woefully inadequate. There's a whole lot of work that your team needs to do before this goes out for submission. And 2 months, I will certainly be making a submission. I will be calling on expertise. I will be calling on some in-depth analysis of this. But it shouldn't fall onto the public. This is a body of work that should already have been done. That's the point I'm making, David. So I do ask you, as you review this, ask your team what data it's based on. There is none.
Thank you, Martin. I'm assuming you've finished your worship, the Mayor. I've got Councillor Holborough next.
I was just waiting for the light to come on. Thank you for your presentation today, and certainly the images are very powerful. Were you involved in the pre-consultation phase? Have you drawn this to our council staff previously, or is this the first time this has come to our attention through your submission?
We made submissions when to your council website. The submission process was more about answering ticking boxes. So there was not a lot of focus on the environment in that process. And when I turned up, as many people did, to the community consultation meetings, they were woefully inadequate. They were poorly organized. And again, there was absolutely no collection of quality data at those meetings. I just urge you, I've been involved in councils all over the country, processes like this. I don't think I've seen a worse proposal, more poorly designed. It's your team should be ashamed of themselves. And when you look at it and when you read it, please hold them to account for the lack of data that's in there.
Martin, I'm going to...
We know that the amount of work that they put in. We are in a process, and there's a deadline to this process that we are caught in. The issue of the COVID has delayed this also, so I think that's unfair to do that, because we have a 1 month submission process, and I look forward to a very strong submission.
A lot of many very strong submissions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Martin. Martin, sorry, I just want to tautoko what His Worship the Mayor said. I appreciate that you hold strong views about the beach and obviously the statement of proposal and the bylaw, but if we could just refrain from commenting on the staff work that's behind it, because some of those staff may even be in the room, and your views, although they're your views, may not necessarily be right. I know others share different views around the work that's been done there. So I'm just going to move to Councillor Elliott, then I think we might have Councillor Pravanov, so and then we'll move to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Martin, for coming to speak today. I was a Te Horo resident for 12 years and share some of your views and concerns. And I just wanted to know, going forward, how it would be possible to contact you, and just to, perhaps you could just flick me an email or us a group email. That would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, Martin, for coming along today. So I'm aware that there's been a lot of conversations between your group and council officers about the issues that you have graphically shown us today, both by email and when there was the Beach Bylaw meeting up there. I'm also aware that members of the Te Horo community have spent a lot of time collecting photographs, sending them to the council staff and to the police, and put yourself basically in jeopardy of your safety. And I too, I have to say, am disappointed that this draft document doesn't address any of those matters. So I really look forward to hearing more from your formal submission. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Martin. Can I just remind councillors and elected members, question time is for questions, not... Councillor Pravanov? Sorry, just councillors and elected members, just remind, we're going to be here all day if we have comments. Question time is for questions. You can save comments and so forth for debate. Now, next up we have Jan McPherson. Oh, sorry, I didn't see that. Jan, sorry, if you could just hold fire for a sec. We still have Councillor Compton. I didn't see that on the screen there before. We've got one further question from Councillor Compton.
Through you, Mr Chair. Sorry to call you back up, Martin. Just a very quick question. You said you represent a group of Te Horo Beach residents. How many people are in your group?
It's informal, probably 100. But it's an informal group. And just so you know, we've been looking after that beach, myself for 7 years, many for 20, 25 years. They're very intimately concerned. And yes, masses of assaults and intimidation. The police are dealing with this, and I haven't raised that issue today. I don't believe that's a council issue. But the bylaws do solve a lot of this, properly enforced. Thank you.
Thanks, Martin. So just a quick scan around the room. I don't see any others on the screen. So we're going to move through to Jan McPherson. Morning, Jan.
Morena. Kia ora koutou. Morena. My name's Jan McPherson, and today I'm representing the Waitohu Dune and Stream Care Group. And the group's been working at the north end of Otaki Beach for the last 20 years, alongside KCDC workers as well. Planting on the dunes, dealing with blowouts, and when the integrity of the dunes is breached, weeding. And again, like Martin, many of the group have been working for 20 years, looking after this area. So they feel very strongly about the area. And we love our beaches. Hold on, let me see if I've got this right. So the issue broadly is that we've been really concerned about the impact of vehicles on the beach, both in terms of the environment and the social environment, so physical and social environment. As a group, we decided we needed to get some idea of how big the problem is. It's not a new problem, and I've noted that there have been letters to KCDC going back into the 90s and possibly before then, I don't know, with concerns about vehicles on the beach. And so we took 2 weekend days where we positioned people at the north end of the beach, counting cars and walkers and trail bikes and quad bikes, just to see what was the size of the problem. Lots of people use the beach. 275 walkers, including children, 114 dogs. A problem that occurs is our vehicles running dogs, so that we quite often get people actually crossing the Waitohu stream and driving north along the beach and running dogs. And often these vehicles are travelling up well over the speed limit. And in fact, running dogs from a vehicle is illegal, but it continues to happen. There were on those 2 days 33 trail bikes, and once again, trail bikes are not legal on the beaches. Many of them are unlicensed. They tend to travel way above the speed limit. And they make an awful lot of noise. Quad bikes, again, are illegal on the beaches, but they're a constant issue for us, and there were 21 of those. Other vehicles, there were, what does it say there? 68. Yeah. So it's a big problem. We're concerned about the environmental damage. So there's the damage to the dunes, including the destruction of plants that support dune stabilisation and build. And that's a really important issue for the council, particularly when we're facing climate change. There's disturbance to the nesting, feeding, breeding patterns of the birds in the area. And we've got quite a number of torea, oyster catchers, and dotterels in the area. So we really feel that we need to protect this space for them. When they do nest, the torea actually, if you go down the beach at the moment, you can see the torea thinking about where they might have the nests. And they nest just in dips on the sand. And I was walking along the beach the other day, and I could see the torea sitting down and trying out different spaces for nests. And in the same view, there were 2 trail bikes racing up and down. So you know that this is not safe for the birds. A considerable problem is the damage to shellfish beds. And we have so many vehicles travelling up and down the beach that this is significant. The general damage to the ecosystem and biodiversity. And finally, the issue of pollution. And although I don't think there's been very much research done in New Zealand about the impact of diesel and petrol residues on beaches, I know there's been some research done in Australia which shows that it's damaging to the life on the beaches.
Jan, I just want to check in. It's an important topic, but I think you are close to, if not over time. So
okay,
sorry.
I will race very quickly.
Well, I just need to be fair to everyone else, because if I give you another 2 or 3 minutes, then I can't stop other people. So how many more slides do you have left to get through?
About 3, I think.
Yeah, that's quite a bit. If you could just
Okay,
speak...
I'll go really quickly.
I mean,
okay.
councillors can read the bullet points up there, so maybe just touch on the most important bits you want to. You will also have the opportunity to make a formal submission. So. Okay,
so we're concerned about safety generally of the public. One of the big issues in terms of the social environment is the noise. We also, the visual impact of the car tracks on the beaches, and many of the members of the community feel intimidated by these people who are driving up and down the beach. They don't feel safe on the beaches. Why is action important now? Climate change, we don't know what the impact of climate change will be on our beaches, but we do know for sure that protecting our coastline is really important. this area is, and Tohoro and Otaki are facing increasing population as people move up here. The existence of, when Transmission Gully and State Highway 1 are going through, it also makes our beaches much more accessible to visitors from the Wellington area, from Palmerston North and the lower North Island. And it seems to us that there's a perception of our beaches as being unpatrolled and therefore essentially open to vehicle use and quad bike use on the beaches and trail bike use. What we'd like you to do is restrict access to the beaches for using bollards and barriers, providing clear, consistent and well-placed signage at all vehicle entrance points to the beach. Ensure better cooperation between KCDC, the Greater Wellington Regional Council and the police, and I know that there are already efforts in this direction anyway, and we appreciate that. I think there needs to be education publicly, because I think that people probably don't realise how much damage vehicles do.
Thank you, Jen. I'm going to cut you off there, because I think by the time that you've gone through that, we've read it as well.
Okay.
Only because you'll end up cutting off your question time as well. So, Councillor Pravanov, and if you could just keep it straight to your question, to the point, because we'll be here till 5.
So, my question to you in relation to trail bikes and quad bikes is, as you've identified, they are not allowed onto the beach. Do you have solutions for stopping them, other than bollards aren't going to stop a quad bike or a motorbike?
No, I think well-placed signage, and I think that one of the issues is that those laws are in place, but enforcement is not. So there needs to be, I mean, either a warning system where a quad bike rider gets warned once and the second time is a fine. And that once that comes in, I think that would have a dramatic impact.
Thank you. Councillor McCann.
Thank you very much, Jan. I noted you talked about how the beaches are unpatrolled, and you've mentioned the word beat enforcement, and that's an issue the council is facing. What do you mean by beach wardens, and what legality would they have?
I need some help from my support crew. I'm not sure. I understand that there have been beach wardens in places whose job is to either give fines. I don't know whether the council has the jurisdiction to do that on the beach areas or just at the entrance to the beach. I know that the Greater Wellington Regional Council actually has jurisdictions over the below the high tide lines. So I think working in coordination with them. But some sort of authoritative presence on the beach, I think, makes a difference. Apparently there was a policeman who used to come down to the beach kind of maybe 10 years ago, and that had had a dramatic impact when he was present on the beaches.
Thank you, Jan. Look, I appreciated you might have needed some assistance from your team. You'll have an opportunity to respond to that question through your submission as well. And also, I mentioned that you folk will be able to make submissions. You'll also have the opportunity to talk to us again if you opt to speak at the hearings as well. So today is not the end. It is simply the beginning. You will have several other opportunities. Thank you very much for coming along.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, Councillor Randall, your name has popped up there. I've just seen that. Councillor Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's about the noise. As this noise occurs in the evening, and do you know that the council has a noise officer, noise control officer? And when we had the expressway, when the expressway was being built, he did a lot of work on that. So maybe you might wish to contact the noise control officer. But is it in the evening? Is it the noise?
The noise is all day long, and probably more in the daytime than the evening.
Thanks, Councillor Randall, and thanks very much, Jan, for coming in. We've got Jake Ruse up next. Welcome back, Jake.
Thank you, James. These are some pictures of people on the beach that one of the earlier groups wanted to present before, so I'll just drop them there to be handed around. I've come along to represent Low Carbon Kāpiti in support of Jan and the Waitohu Stream and Junghia group. Obviously, the link between this and our group is climate change. Part of what we do is is really to preserve what we love, and we love the beaches. And not only as a space that we can all go down and share and enjoy and connect with nature, but also they actually have a vital role in protecting, human settlements and inland areas as well. So healthy dunes are a great defence against rising seas and other similar impacts. So really, I know time is short, so I'll just say that our group of 200 members has taken an interest in this issue. We will be making a submission. We support the points that the Dune Care group has raised regarding stronger enforcement, and I can see in the proposed changes to the bylaw that there are some measures there that seem like they will have an impact. So there is some good stuff in there, but there's probably ways that can be improved too. But anyway, we will be making a submission.
Thanks very much, Jake. Just quick look around the room for questions. No one's down there? All right, we'll look forward to your submission. Thanks very much, Jake.
Thank you.
Next up is Jim Simmons. Good morning, Jim. Thanks for taking the time to come along.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to be involved in the democratic process. It is appreciated. I'm the chairman of the Waikanae Estuary Whitebaiters Network, and our primary concern is access to the beaches and that for, in the main, older people with infirmities. We have attended a mediation run by the Human Rights Commission with KCDC, and GW were involved, as was DOC. Up until very recently, in fact this year, we had a permit system available that whitebaiters could get a permit, drive responsibly, and access the river. We are aware of GW's content in this, and DOC's also with regard to the estuary. So we have a lot of information, and we have provided a lot of information to all three parties. DOC's own scientist, Guy Gary Stevenson, has come out and said that there is no proof that vehicles damage or cause harm to the beaches responsibly driven. And we have a lot of other information. We have information that shows an average male running along the beach puts nearly half of the impact of a Toyota Land Cruiser. We have access to the number of people that complain about vehicles on beaches, and they are very few, but they seem to be taken more notice of than our 140 odd members and families that support them going about their lawful and enjoyable pastime. So really all I would like to say, we have made submissions, we will be making more submissions, and we will no doubt attend the final hearing, which is all part of the democratic process and for which we thank you. But we are concerned about accessing for people with infirmities and disabilities. We are concerned about the attack on freedoms on our Kiwi way of life, and especially when there is no evidence that harm is done. Yes, there is hoons, we acknowledge that, but maybe utilising the goodwill of responsible beach users could go to some way to assisting, at least being able to phone someone in the council and say, we've got hoons here. We understand the good work's done on the dunes and the planting around the show, and we can understand the anger and the frustration when hoons go all through there and bash it up. Hoons have always been with us and always will. There used to be legal motorbike races on the beach in my dad's day. He was a Kāpiti person. They used to race the motorbikes up Peka. Well, we don't see a return to those days. But we do see a return to the freedom of accessing the more remote areas of our beaches in a responsible way. Go up there any time at Peka, and there's families enjoying themselves, having little picnics, and the kids are running free, and they can actually get there. Not everyone can walk 10 miles up a beach. So that was it. I just ask that the beaches don't belong only to walkers. They belong to all of us. Responsible use of our beaches with vehicles, there is no proof of harm done to them. So that's all.
Thanks very much, Jim. I've got Councillor Randall up first.
Thank you, Jim. regarding disability parking, my understanding of the bylaw is that the council will designate certain areas on the beach for disability people to park their cars who are suffering from a disability. But in your case, your members are very old, very elderly, and most of them have medical conditions, and you've got to carry a net and tackle. So what's your response to that?
Well, right up until last year, whether it was illegal or not according to the laws of DOC and GW and KCDC, right up until last year, we could get a permit and we could drive to our whitebaiting spot. The majority of the whitebaiters are old, and I'm probably representative of the age group. In fact, some of them are 80. They're not lonely. They have comradeship on the river. They get out, they're getting their exercise. We were allowed to drive there. As far as I'm aware, no one has ever been run over on the beach. So, you know, I see public safety come up to me, that's a red herring. Unless there is a record of mass running overs of people on the beach. So I believe that with a permit system, you register your quad or your motorbike, whatever, with a permit system, vehicles driven responsibly on the beach during the whitebait season only. I know how busy that beach is over the summer. That could be reinstituted. And whitebaiters would ping the hoons. Make no bones about that. We're not shrinking violets. And we already, along the tracks, along the side of the river on the Waikanae side, we slow the youngies down. So we would envisage marking out with perhaps waratahs or something a safe vehicle access down to the river. And we would do that at our cost. We're not asking for any financial assistance, we're just asking for access to our hobby that personally I've done on that river since the 70s.
Thank you. Sorry, just in the interest of time.
Time's important, sorry.
Councillor Compton. You'd finished, Councillor Randall? Yes, Councillor Compton.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, just a couple of quick questions, hopefully. I'm not a whitebaiter. My father-in-law is, but I'm not. So just could you explain what's the length of the whitebaiting season, is the first question, just to understand sort of what the time period of access you're looking at here. And also, do you have... I'm going to go back to it again. Do you have issues with whitebaiters from out of town coming in and causing trouble as well? I mean, there's obviously... whitebait season comes along and you get people flooding down to the west coast of the South Island to do it. Do we have similar issues with that sort of carry on here, or?
Currently mid-August to the end of November. There is, that whole thing's under review and there's a good chance the season will be shortened. Not sure at what end. So it's autumn into late winter, spring, and into very early summer. Yeah, when there's a lot of whitebait around, and even during the weekend, us locals quite often don't whitebait during the weekend. We leave it to the batch owners and the people that come out of town. In general, whitebaiters are responsible. They don't hoon up and down the beach. They're a funny little fish. They cause huge emotions. And when they're running, you can have a little bit of altercation. I've only ever seen one fight on the Waikanae River. Yeah. So for such a small fish, they create a lot of passion. But in general, no problem with people from out of town. You know, the river can only hold so many people, and if you get there and you think, oh, so you go home or try and find somewhere else.
Thanks. So my dad's not around anymore, but I do recall the story of him throwing someone into the Otaki River. So, yep. Councillor Compton, I think you have another. That was it. His Worship the Mayor.
Jim, you're aware that there's a mixed jurisdiction amongst the different authorities on the beach area, particularly the Waikanae Estuary Scientific Reserve area. And are you aware that the Regional Council and the Department of Conservation have rules on that in terms of banning vehicles, which a council bylaw cannot override? You're aware of that?
Yes, Guru, I'm aware of that. I'm a bit angry about it. We don't vote for upper hut councillors and that sort of thing, so why are they making rules on our beaches? But yes, we are aware of that. But just because the rules are there does not make them right. There is no scientific evidence in that. And I got a photo from last Thursday of the tide washing right over that sand spit. Any bird that nests there, that's a Darwinian theory, they'll soon become extinct.
A follow-up note, but you are aware that those are regional council and department conservation rules and regulations. No matter what your view and my view can be, we cannot override their law.
I am aware of it, but we could. Closer to the river, with KCDC had the will to let us carry on with the permit system, we can get closer to our whitebaiting. If you had the will.
Thank you, Jim. I don't see any further questions on there. I appreciate you coming along and look forward to you no doubt making a submission as well.
Thank you very much, and we do appreciate the opportunity.
Next up is Ian Redwood. Redwood? I am noticing some people leaving, which is obviously fine. It's entirely your prerogative, but I do encourage people, there will be discussion when we come to the actual paper. And as an example, I've made a couple of notes. There's been questions raised already around the environmental impacts and also around enforcement. I encourage you, if you do have to leave, to read the paper because it speaks specifically to those two issues and the fact that largely environmental are under the realm of Greater Wellington and enforcement is under the realm of the New Zealand Police Council. Is not legally able to issue enforcement notices for a moving vehicle. So I just worry if you leave, you may miss hearing that through the discussion. So Ian, you're up.
Good morning. I'd just like to make a few comments on the beach access at Manly Street North. My name's Ian Redwood and I live at 201 Manly Street, which is just one section away from the beach access. My wife Penny and I have owned our house now for 45 years, so a bit of history there. And we've always enjoyed using the access to take canoes or dinghies and children and grandchildren down to the beach, and we're a bit disappointed to see there is some thoughts there to close the access for vehicles. We also have bigger boats, so I've got a boat and a tractor, and I use this access quite regularly to go out to Kāpiti. Now, I've noticed over the last few years that the number of problem drivers on the beach has reduced quite significantly. There are only 2 or 3 drivers causing problems and noises, etc. This year, and the local residents give them a fairly hard time, and they do get the message. But what I would like to counsel, if they retain the access but carry out beach patrols, it's been 2 or 3 years since I've seen a patrol on the beach, and I think if the hoons, as you call them, know that the beach is being monitored, well, they will tend to drop off and go elsewhere. So I'd like to see those beach patrols reinstated. Now, if council do decide to close the access, either by gates or a barrier, because I think it would need to be retained as a emergency access. There's at high tide, there's no access from the Kāpiti Boating Club through to Waikanae River, and if there was an incident there, there would be no access if that was closed off completely. Now, I would like to see the access retained for boating people. There's about 10 of us and longliners that use that access. Now, that could be by way of a swipe card or a combination lock on the barrier arm, something similar to that. And I'd just like council to just reconsider and just come up with some sort of system to keep that open for the launching access. And that would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. We've got Councillor Pravanov.
today. So when you yourself and the other boat users launch boats from that access site, where do you park your vehicles?
Park them on the beach above high tide, directly in front of our place, which is just on the northern side of the Manly Street access, probably within about 50 metres of that access.
Is there any opportunity to park them on the road?
That little road is pretty busy. It's got a couple of camper vans there, and other people do park there and walk their dogs through or their children through. Well, I've got no problems with families coming down onto the beach and parking sensibly, and because they've got 2 or 3 kids, they've got buckets and spades and goodness knows what. If they park on the road, it's quite a expedition to get everything down to the beach.
Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Ian. The Manly Street access, we've had people coming to our community board meeting over periods of time, asking for better access to that, for the council to tidy that area up. Now, my understanding is, if the council were insisting to control that area, that access way, you would be happy with a gate, provided you could access it, some methods of accessing it? Or
yes, that's correct. Only for the boat owners launching and retrieving boats. Really.
Councillor Halliday.
Thank you for your presentation there, Ian. A couple of questions. Obviously, you've been there for a while. Can you give us an indication on how many boats would park down there, say on an average summer weekend?
Probably 10 or 12 regular users.
And have you noticed there's a tendency for other waterborne craft to launch down that way, or is there a preference for that sort of usage down that way at all?
2 jet ski owners normally there, and sometimes the longliners.
Thank you.
Excellent. I don't see any other names up, so thank you very much for coming in, and look forward to you possibly making a submission. Thank you. Trevor. Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Trevor Garrett. I'm here to speak about the North Beach access ramp as well. So I know a few of these gentlemen here, Ian as well. To me, obviously, controlling the space in terms of compliance with the law is important, and I know there's overlapping issues with the government, the regional council and the local council, and obviously there's a lot of talk about the estuary and how that's managed. So we recognise that with these overlapping ownership and responsibilities and usage, and so to me actually closing the ramp would be detrimental, but having some sort of control, perhaps in the way of some sort of bollards which could easily be created by the existing stormwater pipes that run down there. So a few extra bollards would stop people driving towards the estuary or further south, because there's some vehicles I've noticed that might go down the ramp and then head all the way down to the boating club. So, you know, I could see, see closing the ability to do that loop would be beneficial from the ecological standpoint, although my personal view is the space between low tide and high tide, there's little or no effect, but the areas below the low tide and above the high tide I think are important and they need protecting. I moved to Kāpiti 15 years ago primarily to fish, and I find work is a very serious interruption to my social life. And that is really around the fishing, and I probably launched there, probably one of the more regular ones there, and I would endorse that 10 to 12 regulars use that ramp for larger boats, but there is increasing numbers in the last few years. There's a few new tractors there now, and I think a lot of us enjoy the quieter space there than the boating club. It is very busy in the summer, and obviously you guys are going to grapple with issues with controlling that space. So I would say closing North Beach would be exacerbating the problem down at Paraparaumu Beach. So I would say that would be not a well thought through point. And the only other thing is the report, point 80, suggests that there was some evidence in your survey that suggested that North Beach should be closed. There was no such question in the survey. So I find it remarkable that that conclusion has been reached, and I'd suggest that you need to have a look at that, because I don't think that's quite right. And I think there's plenty of use in that area, and I'd really be disappointed to see any sort of elitist environment where certain people had authority to access areas where others couldn't, and that would apply down at Paraparaumu Beach as well. I think that we'd end up creating some sort of exclusive environment. You'd see further north in the country where some rich people live, Whakatania places, where boat ramps have completely become inaccessible to the public. I don't think that matches the Kiwi way of life for the average bloke.
Thanks, Trevor, and I certainly don't think that's what we're intending to do, but I take that feedback on board. I've got Councillor Randall again.
Again, Mr Mayor.
Not yet, Bernie. Actually, rephrase that, not at all.
My question is the idea you suggested about the stormwater pipes as a barrier. What about groins? We don't have them up here, but wouldn't putting groins in, like they have at Eastbourne, and they build up the sand as well, would that be a good idea or not?
Yes, I would say, of course, because they would help control. But of course, you're probably going to have to go down a long road of research and interested parties that represent the state involved in that. But yeah, that could be a good solution. Just one other point: signage. You guys obviously pointed out, and it's clear in the report that there's quite overlapping duties. Another signs say call the police. Doc says call us. Kāpiti Coast District Council says call us. But what are any of you guys going to do? Probably nothing. It should say call police 111. That information's not there. It's unlikely that people's complaints are actually getting recognised and acknowledged and dealt with. I'd say, some reasonable standout signage at the police deal with the word hoons. I'd use petrol heads, and they are out there, and they are a very small percentage of our population, so the rest of us don't want to be constrained because of their bad behaviour.
Thanks, Trevor. Point taken, and certainly something that we've considered as well through this process.
Cool.
Councillor Randall, I'm assuming that was all you had, and I can't see any other name until that one goes. Thank you. There's no other names. Thanks very much, Trevor.
Okay. Thank you.
We've got Mike up next. Okay, all good. Thank you. So we are down to two more left. We've got Dennis. Good morning, Dennis.
Good morning. My name is Dennis Grant. I'm a resident in the north end of Manly Street at 207. I'm a boat owner, an old man. I enjoy my fishing. I don't eat it. I enjoy my whitebaiting. I do eat it. I'm concerned about the reports of closing that access, because I think it's everybody's right to access the beach. And there are particular disabled people living in that area that need wheelchair access and other access to the beach. If the beach was closed, it would have a detrimental effect on their activities. And I wish to see that access remain open to everybody, apart from motorcyclists. That's all I've got to say at this stage.
Okay, thanks very much, Dennis. Councillors, elected members, we've got Councillor McCann.
I think it's really important, Dennis, to find out what you do with the fish then.
Eat it. No wastage.
Quick scan around the room. Any other questions for Dennis? Councillor Halliday, thank you.
Hi, Dennis. Look, this is a little bit of a hypothetical question. If the option was explored with regards to what's being looked at, which is a gated possibility down there, the idea being, under the impression of it's not to restrict access, more to manage access, so access wouldn't be unfairly denied anyone. Do you think the older generation would embrace that at all?
I think they would, and I think if you want to do that in consultation with the people, it would be good.
All right, thanks very much for coming along. I don't see any other names there. I'm going to move on to Mr. Trask. Graham. Good morning, last but not least.
Morena, kia ora koutou. My name's Graham Trask. I've lived on the coast pretty much all my life. And I reside in the North Beach area. Haven't moved around much at all. Up until just recently, I used to do quite a bit of boating. And in fact, my last boat would have been probably somewhere around about 3/4 of the length of this room, width of this room. And I used the North Beach access way, and over a period of time I had a lot of problems getting in and out of there with the way the access was, but over a period of time we got it sorted, and what we have at present is quite well suited for most boats. I'm still boating, but not as regularly as I used to, but I'm here today to support those for the status quo. And I think one of the concerns that I have is around putting some sort of gateway at the end of that little road there where you approach the access way onto the beach. And for me personally, I don't think it's a good idea at all. I know we live in a world where we've got to be looking at housing all ways of people's concerns around the access on the beach, and I think my idea would be to, like Councillor Randall said, we need to have some groins on the beach. And I know there's a couple of ladies over here that were shaking their head and said, we don't want groins on the beach, but groins would actually do two jobs in one. They're going to keep people contained in a certain area, but also it's going to act as a way of stabilising the moving of sand in that area, which constantly moves south. So if we do it right, we can do it in a way that's going to contain people in a certain area for the likes of boating or driving onto the beach just to park their car on the beach.
All right, thank you. Questions? Councillor Randall?
Graham, and I just want to say thank you and for your postings on Facebook. I read them in depth and very well done. Thank you.
Something else I might just add also is the amount of traffic that goes on the beach there with regards to boating. I would increase that figure that's been put out there of 10 to maybe 20 in peak times, if not more sometimes.
Thank you, Graham. I don't see any other names on the screen, so I'm quick scan around the room. No? All right, thank you very much for coming in. Appreciate it. So we're just going to move through to the next part of the agenda. So if I just bring it up, and we are now public speaking time. So members business, item number 6A, public speaking time responses. I'm just looking across at the stuff. I don't think there's any specific responses. Many of them will be dealt through in the paper around the Beach Bylaw, given everyone spoke this morning on that. I do encourage you to stick around if you've got time to hear that. Councillor Elliott, were you sort of indicating something?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. permission, please, I do have a customer speaking response.
So it's normally staff responding to the public.
I know, however, I beg your permission to give us a response.
I think it would be more appropriate through debate, Councillor Elliott, if it's relating to the Beach Bylaw. And if I do that for you, then I need to start doing that for everybody. So if you could just hold that thought, keep it for the Beach Bylaw. Is it regarding the Beach Bylaw stuff? Yep, keep it for the debate part of discussion there, and I'll allow it then. So we have no responses. I'll move on to item number 6B, which is leave of absence.
Yep.
I've got the list here and it's not down here. Okay, so it is noted. Mr. Burns, we have moved on, but I am going to allow it, given that you've asked and Grayson has acknowledged that you had asked. So if you want to take the podium. I thought it had been, it's not the first time that an elected member has got up and spoken, and that's why. Sure. Staff or manager. If you go, we are now looking at, we're an hour into the meeting. I would say this for anyone, if it was Councillor Halliday or whatever, so if you could just stick to your 3 minutes.
Yeah, okay.
And then
I'll quickly talk about the, particularly today, about the statement of proposals, which actually is a separate, almost a separate document. I'm a bit concerned on some of the proposals there, and I'll just go through a couple of them. Proposal 5 states that electric gate and TV cameras at Parapurumu Beach and Waikanai Beach boating club access points, and I question the justification for this proposal. The council's own beach survey found that only 7.5% of people wanted cameras for bylaw compliance, and nobody even mentioned electric gates. It wasn't even mentioned, so I just wonder how this proposal was warranted. Proposal 6 says to fence off the boat launch site at Manly Street North. It's been mentioned very well and covered by the residents behind me, and they're on a very good point. But what concerns me is that the report actually says the results from our survey favoured closure of the Manly Street site, and this actually is not true. The survey shows 36% of people favoured closure. Nearly 70% of people actually don't want it closed or do not have an opinion. So there's something not right there in that interpretation of the survey data. How can this low figure be misused to close a well-used, popular, historic boat launching site, pushing more boat users towards the busy, especially in summer, Kāpiti Boating Club end? Proposal 8 talks about erecting a barrier at the southern Otaki Beach Rivermouth area from the Tuhoro area. This track has been used by vehicles for nearly 200 years. It's the old coach road, and it does actually access some private land as well. And I'm also proposals 9 and 10 about closing or putting barriers at Tuhoro Beach, Otaki beaches. I just question those proposals in the statement of proposal, and I ask what's going on. What's the justification for the mass fencing off of traditional beach access points for vehicles? There is a long and strong tradition of vehicles accessing beaches at the points the staff are asking to be blocked off. In the council's beach survey of around 1,700 respondents, nearly 30% of people say they actually park or drive on the beach. That's quite a number. So it is a well not acknowledged, but it's a traditional activity done by quite a few. And the survey found that only 22% of people see the current bylaw as outdated and want vehicles banned from the beach, 22%. So nowhere in the survey does the putting up of barriers come across as the prevailing view, nowhere. But what do the public want? I believe the public wants better signage, improved environmental design, patrols, and improved enforcement. The actual bylaw itself is not that bad. So, have you got any time left?
I think you're pretty much just on the button there. So
okay,
I'm going to, if you want some time for questions, well, there you go.
To reject the statement of
so
proposal.
I do have a question for you, and I'm not too sure the other elected members do. Guy, you've stood as a community board member elected by your community, represent your community. You've participated through the processes, I understand, or assume through the community boards. The statement of proposal is been pulled together from the feedback through the surveys, the drop-in sessions, all the work that's been done over a number of months, which I think has been outstanding from the team. have you fed this through? I mean, you've had the opportunity, more so than a member of the public, as an elected member, to share the views that you've just shared in public speaking. Have you shared those views? I've certainly shared my views around aspects of the Te Rehore Beach, for example, and the restrictions through there in shaping the SOP and the bylaw. Do you feel you've raised them and they haven't been listened, or have you not raised them and only raising them now that the document has been completed?
Yeah, they have been raised, yes, and we are talking about it at the moment.
We as in your community board, or?
Well, I'm talking to the community board, yes.
Okay, because it just seems a shame that it's been brought in the 11th and a half hour when the document's been finished, rather than the creation of the document. But anyway, look,
and I did participate in the survey as well.
Thank you, Guy.
Yep.
So look, thanks for that. We'll move on now to the more formal part of the agenda. Item 6B is leave of absence. Any leave of absence?
Yes.
Councillor Holborough?
22nd of October to 4th of November, please.
Sorry, I didn't actually hear those dates. Can you just...
22nd of October to 4th November.
Did you get that, team? Yep. Someone want to move that? Moved by His Worship the Mayor, seconded by Councillor Compton. Any further discussion? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Matters of an urgent nature, I'm not aware of any, so I move on to item number 7, is updates, and there is none. And so we move on to item number 8, which is the report back from Zeal. So, Tanya, if I could just invite you and the team up. And we are looking at page number 6 of the report. Just moving through a little bit quickly, team, so we can catch up some time, and then I imagine we'll spend a bit of time on the Beach Bylaw. I'm just going to hand it over to you and the team, and if you can just walk us through the report, and then we'll go into the presentation.
Morena koutou. Today we have a report back from Zeal. Zeal Kāpiti Zeal Education Trust does our youth development work on behalf of Council and has a unique partnership with Council to deliver youth development services. And they will be reporting back on year 4 and 5 of their contract. Their contract in the paper will explain that we usually have a report back annually, but COVID mucked that up a little bit, so we've combined year 4 and 5 together, and the report back will actually come directly from the Zeal team. But in the paper there are some outcomes that are based on the contract itself, and it has some staff comments in them. But apart from that, there are some significant things to point out, and that is really around, and the team might talk about it some more, about the impact that COVID has had on some of our young people and the services, and actually all of our community services and social services that are trying to provide support. So I just wanted to mention that as well. I don't know if you're happy to move on for the presentation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so if I'd just like to introduce the team quickly that's in the back. Sorry, I have forgotten most of your names. Yeah. But we have, I'll start with the CEO. So we have the CEO of Zeal, who is Jesse Boyce. We have Hamish Campbell, who is the manager of Zeal Kāpiti. We have the supporting crew behind them. Apologies. And they have a presentation on their report back that they will just start with. Yeah. Thank you.
Just welcome up, team. Good morning.
It's really good to be here. My name is Hamish Campbell, and I'm the manager of Zeal Kāpiti. I'm actually a Hutt boy originally, and about in 2013 we saw the light and moved north. And I've been in the seat of the manager at Zeal for just over a year now, and it's been quite a year. The awesome thing about Zeal is that I get to work with a phenomenal group of people. And so I just want to point out Sean here at the front is one of our youth workers. He's also our resident tutor, barista tutor, which is amazing. With Daniel in the beanie he's kind of in flux. He's a young person, but he's also being contracted by us to provide tech support for events. So he's the man. Monique is our admin, programs and youth work person, and she's the glue that kind of holds us all together, kicks our butt when we need it. Jack is one of our young people, but he's also looking at interning with us next year, so we hope that pans out. And Jesse, of course, the chief. So 8 years ago, the unbelievably tragic loss of 2 lives in Kāpiti led this community to have some very real conversations around how to best protect, support and create positive outcomes for youth in Kāpiti. And out of those hard conversations grew a relationship with a crazy and passionate organisation called Zeal. And Zeal has been on the ground here in Kāpiti for 5 years. And in that time, it has steadily grown its reach and its impact. It has created communities of belonging that have supported and transformed the lives of countless young people. Zeal's vision is to see all young people living into full lives of meaning and purpose. And this means young people living into the fullness of their identity, their infinite self-worth and value, connected to healthy, safe communities and deep relationships. Zeal's vision is ambitious, but it's necessary. But only possible when councils like KCDC, communities like Kāpiti, work together in relationship and partnership with organisations like Zeal. And I just want to take a moment to recognise the incredible amount of work that went into getting Zeal up and running in Kāpiti well before my time, and the bravery of individuals to fight for this service to be available here. And I'm sure there are people in this room right now who were a part of that process and fought hard for it. So I just want to say a massive thank you. I like to think that Zeal is a place for youth to stand under their own weight, but supported when needed. In 2018, the dream was realised to create a space that could contain all that transformative energy and creativity. So on the PowerPoint, that's a little glimpse of our building, which we've been in now for over 2 years. And so I just wanted to, talk a little bit to our deliverables and some of those outcomes. So I just want to start with our program. So over the time that we've been in our building, we've built a number of programs that are delivering really positive outcomes for young people. We've got barista, photography, graphic design, live sound, recording and event management. All those programs invite young people into a relationship with a tutor and the opportunity to develop their skills and just really to grow their understanding of who they are and what their value is to the world. We are extremely excited at the moment about barista and the potential that our barista program has. During year 4 and 5, we've had 61 students trained through our programs. They are a mixture of ones that have run in colleges, but we've recently started running them outside of colleges as well, so that we can include young people who don't need NCA credits but still want the experience and skills that barista offers. It's definitely something that we see as our part of our sustainable plan going forward as well. It brings in income for us. It has meant that we are able to give Sean more hours, which means that he doesn't have to have another job, which means he can be more focused with Zeal, which is amazing. And we see this only expanding as well in the future. A part of our deliverables is around good youth participation in decision making and design and delivery. And we have a number of events that happen inside our centre, out in the community. But we always try to have young people that create those events, lead those events, and are present at those events and making them happen. So we've had Youth-a-Ween, which has been a collaboration with Youth Council, which has run for 2 years. We had a street carnival last year, which was a community almost outreach, bringing families and younger people into Zeal. And we have our Musicians Lounge, which continues to grow and give young people opportunities to perform. So Musicians Lounge, happens. It did happen every month. At the moment, it's happening every 2 months. We have young people, getting the chance to perform on a stage with a proper sound system and get a real feel for what it's like to be in front of an audience, which is amazing. Our community events, I think we've supported around 12 or 13 community events over, actually that's just over year 5, so in year 4 there's even more. Kāpiti Food Festival, Strawberry Festival, we did an Otaki Great Skate, we did a Great Skate in Parapara Umu. We have helped out the Lions with their fundraisers, their fertiliser drop, their Yellow Pages drop. KCDC's Acoustic Night and Movie in the Park was supported by us last year as well. A deliverable in our contract is around mobile services. We have our coffee cart, which we take into community events with the young people to give them experience. We did have our music box, which was a container with musical instruments that young people could come and learn how to play or play as a group together. That became a little bit difficult to get around the community, and so we transitioned to our stage trailer, which has proved to be a game changer for us. It's more mobile, it gives us the opportunity to go into to more venues, and it's also part of, again, of our sustainability going forward. It gets hired out privately, and we can add money to our bottom line through that hireage. Through our strong community engagement, there's a few avenues. So at the moment we're doing a bit of work with Te Kura, which is a distance learning organisation. So they actually use our building, and a lot of their students engage with our programs, which is awesome for them because they're not a mainstream education, they get to engage in programs that they wouldn't have that opportunity to. I'm not sure if you're aware, but there is an incredibly large homeschooling network on the Kāpiti coast, and we also have a number of them coming through our programs as well. And again, being able to offer them opportunities like photography and graphic design, event management is awesome for them. One of the tricky things with running a youth centre is that your youth grow up and leave, which is good, but also there's sometimes bubbles that can happen, and you have a group of older youth that all of a sudden are gone and you're left with a bit of a vacuum. We have had that experience when I first sort of came into the seat, realising that we had a large number of older youth. So we have invited the local primary schools to come and visit Zeal, and for 2 reasons. Just to get them to see Zeal on the inside, because they all would have probably seen it from the outside and not know what happens in there. But we wanted to invite them in and let them know that that Zeal Kāpiti is a space for them, that it belongs to them and it was for them. And it was really good for the teachers to see Zeal as well, and the parents that came with them. So just engaging with another group in the community. Our after-school hangs feeds into the diverse youth community that's utilising our centre. After-school happens 4 days a week, Tuesday through to Friday, 3:30 to 5:30. That space continues to grow, more young people coming through. We saw young people come through from our school visits as well, which was really encouraging. We try to make our after-school hang space an incredibly welcoming, warm, inclusive space. We have a number of groups that use it on a regular basis. We have quite a large group from the Rainbow community, and they constantly tell us that they feel safe, they feel supported and not judged, which is music to our ears. Again, Te Kura use our facility. We had Idea Services use our facility for a while with some of their young people. But we know that there are many other youth communities that we need to make connection with and draw into that space. And so that is something that we are focused on into the future. I just want to talk a bit about COVID. COVID was a tricky time for us, having to pivot to online and trying to transition as much of what we do into that space was really, really hard. We didn't have a massive online presence at the time, and so we had to work really hard to sort of try to build that up. In terms of a team, not a lot of us saw social media as a space that we existed, and so to get our head around Instagram and TikTok, I still haven't got my head around TikTok. But we did manage to build really good connections with our young people through those platforms. We continued to run after-school hangs through Zoom. We did live streaming. We ran competitions. We were able to run a couple of creative programs online. One of our previous youth workers went to Australia. We were able to connect with her so she could run a graphic design course for us even from there. So as much as it was really difficult, it also taught us a whole lot about our young people, about how they communicate and how they're operating online. Some of it was scary, but also, means that I think going forward our online strategy is going to be a lot stronger. Daniel is on this slide because in terms of, I guess, our hope for young people is that they enter into Zeal, they find a place of belonging, but they also find an avenue that helps grow them for the future. And Daniel is an amazing young person. You can blush. But he came through. You came through a live sound course? No. Just popped along. Yeah. But you've done a live sound course? Sort of. Yeah. But he has been taken under the wing of our events coordinator, Devon, and shown the ropes. And as Devon has sort of journeyed with him and given him more and more knowledge, Daniel has been able to step into his shoes in some ways and run stuff by himself to the point where we've been able to contract him for tech support, which is amazing. So when I think of Daniel, I just think of a young person that found Zeal. He often says that his dream was to work for Zeal, and so it's nice to have made his dream come true. This young lady, Alia, is one of our interns at the moment, but she was one of our young people as well, and she is an incredible young person, huge potential, and just fits so well into our staff environment. Anywhere she goes, people rave about her and about the energy and the wisdom that she brings into a space. So to have her on our staff is awesome. But the only reason she's in that space now is because of the support and the love and the welcome that she received at the beginning of her time at Zeal. Yeah. And so I'm incredibly proud of how far Zeal has come and the difference that we're making. We know there is more work to be done. We know there are youth who aren't connected to us that need to be. And we're committed to chasing our vision of all youth living into full lives of purpose and meaning. And that's why the relationship and partnership that we have with council and with our local community is so incredibly precious to us. Got it.
Thank you. And so, Tanya, I'm just assuming we'll open up for questions of Zeal. Yeah. So, Your Worship, did you have your name down from a previous or now? Now. Okay. His Worship the Mayor.
First of all, thank you for the work you did when following the Christchurch terrorist incident, when we organized the Race Relations Day event. We thank you for these, Daniel and his sound system people who came up. And you have always been enablers of other ideas, so we appreciate that. The question that before I go to that, is a message that I want to give to the rest of the councillors here. You would note under paragraph 3 that this project was, the available funding for the Youth Development Centre was brought forward, if you like, from the year 2022-23 on the long-term plan to the year 2014-15. It's a message that I actually wanted to give to the Chief Executive, that the governance can shift projects. This is what happens to the Performing Arts Centre, which we delivered 10 years earlier. This sort of back to the future type things. So just because an event is stuck in a long-term plan doesn't mean that the governance cannot change that. Somebody will give the message to the Chief Executive, I'm sure. Having said that, I'm looking at the report, staff report, paragraph 24, paragraph 27, paragraph 34, picks up on an issue in terms of the outreach to Maori, young Maori. You have problems there. Can you shape for us what the obstacles are? And associated with that is the secondary question of the awareness of an issue in Otaki of pre-teens getting into trouble. I know yours is 16 years old and above, but I'm sure that and I understand that you've gone to primary schools, which is really great. So that's a secondary question. Over to you. And the Chairman, after that, I've got a couple more.
Yeah, it's a ongoing, I guess, focus for us to be in Otaki. And at the moment, we are engaged in a project up there, which is funded through Creative NZ. It's called Toi Rangatahi Project, which is about gathering young people from the colleges in the kura and putting them through event management courses, and then providing events for the community. So that at the moment is sort of where our energy is going. It has been difficult sometimes from a relationship perspective, just kind of like building those relationships and getting to a point where there's trust. So that young people can be a part of what we're doing. But also COVID for this year has really messed with some of the time frames, and we've had to postpone and push things back. So there are difficulties around that as well. I would be first one to put my hand up and say that the steps into that space of interacting with local Māori and iwi has been slow, and it is definitely something that needs to ramp up, and we are wanting to find those key connections in those communities where we can start to build those relationships and build that trust. Yeah.
Thank you. Yep.
The project, we strategically placed ourselves in Otaki. So we were given a choice to go anywhere in the Kāpiti coast. And that was a proactive choice to place ourselves and to interact and to listen in that community. As an organisation, Māori engagement is a priority for us. And the next phase for us will be engaging in those relationships, but it will be more an invitation to teach us how, and for Māori to lead that engagement and to show us what it looks like in its proper setting. So hopefully that adds some value to that kōrero.
Thank you. That's helpful. Through you, the Chairman. My second question is I know we've got a contestable fund. Within that framework, I see that the report mentions you've been working closely on projects with KYS. Can you tell us how that's going, how that's developing, and what you project in the future?
Our relationship with KYS is developing. We have always seen KYS as a critical component to the, I guess, the service we operate as well, because we're not a health provider, and so we're an education provider. So to have KYS as a part of the network available to us in Kāpiti is amazing. Their expertise is invaluable for when we have a young person in crisis, that we can refer and build that support network around that young person with KYS. We're also developing through our connection with Youth Council as well. Often Youth Council, KYS and us are working on projects to deliver events. We did a project during COVID together to sort of canvass young people about what they enjoyed and what didn't enjoy about their community, which was very successful. And we are constantly having KYS youth coaches and youth workers bring their young people into Zeal to show them what is on offer there. We have KYS referring young people into our programs. I'm really excited about the progress that's been made in that space with KYS. Yeah.
Given you mentioned the impact of COVID, and I know that the government agencies are investing heavily on a whole range of things. So are you aware, I suppose the question for you and staff is, are you aware of any funding specifically in the youth area which you can tap into, given that you've got to be working towards a sustainable funding program and you've got 3 years to do this?
We have already some of the available funding around COVID response. So some of that was during the initial lockdown for us, just to provide support where we felt it was necessary for young people. But there are other avenues for that as well that are on the horizon. We have an amazing team in our head office that are all over that stuff. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yes, so there's also some funds coming through Creative NZ, which has been really useful for us. Also as a part of the sustainable funding piece. So in year 4 and 5 we saw that as an establishment years of the centre, and to really get good business as usual on the ground support. And then now we're moving into year 6, into this next 3-year period, where one of our strategic focuses will be engaging local business and private financial partners alongside council and our social enterprise engagements. So we are looking at this as a critical part of how we sustainably stay in Kāpiti as a meaningful presence for a long time. We recognise that Zeal's seen as a beacon of hope for young people, and we want to be that going into the future.
Councillor Hanford.
Kia ora Hamish and Jesse and the rest of the team as well, and completely echo the beacon of hope comment that you just made. For me, being on the ground around a lot of young people a lot of the time, because of my age, I see the impact that Zeal's had on so many young people around me, and I'm really keen to kind of know about how we can continue to spread that beacon of hope to more young people who might not be in positions where they're receiving that at the moment, or haven't necessarily been engaged with Zeal or haven't heard about the programs and the things that Zeal offers. I think for me as well, I just want to briefly take this opportunity to thank you for your work, especially during lockdown, and the kinds of things coming together with KYS and the Youth Council being an awesome example of how those different groups can work together to wrap around young people during that time, because it was a really stressful time for everyone. But I think for young people not having their normal support system around them at school, their friends, not being able to hug their friends, it's the same for all of us. But took a real toll on youth, and also just acknowledging you for the support, for example, the Kāpiti and Vara Youth Summit that my friend and I set up a few years ago, the support from Zeal in organising that, and I know Daniel and Alia, both of them, and incredible young people, so I just want to acknowledge both of you and acknowledge Alia too. But my question, and sorry for taking so long to get there, is how have you been able to measure how far the word of Zeal is reaching, and how many young people are potentially not aware of the programs and the services that Zeal offer? Like, how have you been able to kind of target then any kind of work to specific communities to make sure that we're reaching, that beacon of hope is reaching as many people, as many young people as it possibly can?
Really good question. There are a lot of young people that don't know what Zeal offers, and I think part of our strategy around that is getting ourselves far more involved in the colleges as well. And so we're trying at the moment to set up youth reps within each of the colleges so that they can build a bridge between school leadership and Zeal itself. But a part of it is, and that's a part of it for me, was getting the year 8s through our building. So the more of those year 8s that we can get into our building and just share the message of what is available for them at Zeal I think is really key. I guess our social media platforms as well, like just ramping up those as well, trying to find avenues to reach into those alternative education areas as well, like the homeschoolers. There are interesting comments that you hear from people in the public about what Zeal is, and everyone almost has a different idea about what Zeal is. So I think we do need to do a little bit of work around our advertising of what we offer, and be really strategic about who sees that, and making sure that it's really understandable for young people, but also for parents, for other organisations that might see us as someone that they can use as a benefit to what they're doing as well. If that answers your question.
Thank you. Now, look, I've got Councillor Compton. I then have Councillor McCann, Councillor Holbrook, Councillor Buswell, Chris Papps. So I do just ask that you keep to questions, brief comment if you must, but otherwise we'll be here till 11:30 before we even get onto the Beach Bylaw. So if you can take it offline, that's fine. So next up we have Councillor Compton.
Kia ora, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for indulging us with a brief comment. My first involvement with Zeal was about 20 years ago when you were on Victoria Street in Wellington, when I had actually had much more hair and it was green. And that was a fantastic... Maybe they connected the two events. But it was a fantastic venue, and the work you do up here is incredible. Over the last couple of years, there's been a huge increase in the number of families in emergency housing situations. And Councillor Randall and I were at a meeting last week where there have been issues with people who are from those families. They've sort of been dropped into their region and they don't have any connections in the community and that. And, there's sort of an attitude of, well, let's, crack down on them and, they're an issue to be shooed away. I guess my question is, have you been approached or have any sort of relationship with the Ministry of Social Development around providing support for those young people? Because they're obviously in a hugely vulnerable position, and I'm very much of the view that they're not a problem to be shooed away, because then there's just another group that comes in after them. We need to address the root of the problem and actually get support around them, because their home situations aren't great. So do you have any sort of relationship with them? Have you been approached by them, or is it sort of an avenue you might look at how you reach out to those young people who they're not necessarily linked in that well to the rest of our community, but they're sort of getting them involved is one of those crucial things to getting their lives in a much better way?
I would not any sort of robust relationship or sort of direct connection, but we do have members of Oranga Tamariki come through with young people, getting them to look around the building and see what's on offer. CAMS brings young people through as well. So there are organisations that are working with very at-risk young people who don't see Zeal as the place to drop them, because we're not that agency. We don't have the capacity to take care of a million at-risk young people. But our hope is that they see us as a place they can tap those young people into supportive communities where they can find young people to surround them and help them adjust or find their place. I mean, I would like to have more conversations with that, especially around sort of like the mentoring side of things too for those young people. Yeah.
So I'd like to say too, and strategically, we've just invited Gladys Sandford, who's the Deputy Chief Executive of Waitangi Northern, to join our board. And the purpose for that is to help place ourselves in, I guess, a continuum of support for young people. So we know where we're placed in that support system. For us, it's not to take over the whole youth sector or youth support space in Kāpiti, but we want to be a meaningful part of a cohesive support space for young people. And so as we engage in these regional conversations, that's what we're thinking about, and it'll be something that we take up with MSD.
Councillor Buswell.
Thanks for coming in today, and thank you for all the work that you do currently in the space around Kāpiti. I actually have quite a number of questions, and one of them was particularly around Māori youth and how you're picking up that kind of area, because we do have a growing population in our community of Māori youth, and I think too that we have this interesting position where we have iwi, we have different marae set throughout our district, but if you don't belong to those marae, sometimes you kind of fall through the gaps. And I know that Kāpiti College is doing a really awesome job in pulling all the different iwi from all over the nation basically into Kāpiti College to show them and make them feel and understand their spirituality as a Māori. So is there an opportunity and capacity for you to reach out particularly to Kāpiti College marae as representing Māori in our district to kind of carry on that impact that they currently have there?
Yes. It's a big question. I mean, an opportunity to get alongside anyone that doing that sort of thing would be amazing. I think for me personally, like coming into the seat only for a year and trying to find my feet, and then with COVID, like I do realise that that push into connecting with local iwi and Māori has not gone as well as I would have liked. But yeah, and it's kind of like realising that there are these groups that are operating in the area, and trying to figure out how we can sit down with those groups and just explain what Zeal is and if there's any way that we can work together. Yeah. So if anyone in this room has connections to groups that would help us to be more involved in iwi and Māori, then please come and talk to us. And just say, hey, look, you need to sit down with these people, or you need to sit down with these people, because that's what we want to do. Yeah, and I think part of our strategy of getting more of our young people into the schools on a leadership level will hopefully help with that as well. Yeah.
No, is it out of school time that you mainly use that facility?
It would probably, I think the bulk of our hours would be in our after school hangs. So yeah, 3:30 till sort of 5:30 time for young people to come through and use the space. That is usually the time too where we have our programs happening. We run events that happen at all different times. So it could be the weekend. Our musicians' lounge is a Monday night. So yeah, and that is definitely something that we need to look at in terms of like how the centre is being used, whether there is capacity in the future to have our staff there on a weekend day, like, and maybe not every weekend day, but opening the space up for different events. Yeah.
We have one of the highest percentages of NEETs in our district, and whether you are tapping into that area, which is really difficult for any organisation to tap into, and they are the people that seem to really easily fall through the cracks. So is there some kind of support network that you can facilitate these people that fall through the cracks in that young age group?
You go. Yeah.
Yeah, so we, as you know, we're part of a national organisation, and this is something that we're piloting at the moment, is how our spaces are utilised more readily throughout the day. In Wellington right now, we're piloting having young people in from Oranga Tamariki who find us at a safe space as an alternate to school. It's something that we find challenging in regards to people resourcing, to resource that, and also in regards to our understanding of practice and safety in regards to working with young people in a different space. But it's something that we're piloting, and if it all goes well, then it'll be something that we roll out across the country.
Team, I've just got a comment from Tanya, so I'm looking across each time and just seeing if the staff have anything to add. So over to you, Tanya.
Sorry, I know time's quite short. I just wanted to point out that the team out there have made a really good point around what they do and what other services in Kāpiti do as well. And it's really, Kāpiti is a small space with lots of services. So it's really to keep in mind that, some of the neat stuff and the contract that some other organisations have with MSD are filling some of that space. And sometimes it's quite difficult to come in over top, particularly in for example, in Otaki or in other parts of the district. So I just wanted to point out that there are other services and other youth services that are doing work around the district as well. And I just wanted to be clear that, there's not a gap necessarily, it's just being serviced somewhere else. And KYS is probably a really good example of the work that they do in that space and delivering services and programs, and for people who aren't in school as well.
Thanks, Tanya. Ange, do you have further questions? Okay. Otaki Community Board, Chris Papps.
Hi. I had a meeting during the week with a couple of students from Otaki College, and their main concern is that they actually can't access the programs down here because we virtually don't have a public transport. We do. It's very, very limited. And what they're looking at is some sort of permanent space in Otaki, like a drop-in area where they can actually go after school. And they don't want all the whistles and bangs with it. They just want somewhere to go. Would there be any chance of something like that actually opening up in Otaki for our youth to actually just have a nice, happy, safe place they can call into after school and perhaps have a chat, have a coffee, play a few games or something? But as I say, not like what you've got down there, but just something a bit more basic, because that is really all they are looking for at the moment.
You know?
You're kind of talking about the dream of Zeal, and based on your question, this might need to be fast-tracked. But our dream is actually community-led spaces in pockets of the coast. And that's through satellite services in the initial phase, and then moving into community leaders who can lead the care and support of their young people there. So it's not about Zeal taking over. That's not our intention. Our intention is to awhi and to encourage and to empower local leadership to care for their young people. So as an initial step, very open to a satellite engagement or space in other areas of Kāpiti, but would look at a cohesive plan for how that would roll out.
Thank you. Yeah.
No.
Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much, Hamish and GC and the team for coming along and all the great work that you're doing. I have one child who's still in the age group, and it's great that there are facilities on the coast here, that people in her age group can be involved in. I just wanted to follow up on what Councillor Hanford was saying in terms of being able to get that message out more to more people. And so I'm just wondering, I think in the report it says that there's 1,675 people have come through the door. Have you any idea what percentage of the young people on the Kāpiti coast that actually covers?
Not a percentage. Those statistics are around, I guess, individual young people entering the building. So there is a I guess there's a core group of young people that we do life with, and that we try to gather up and funnel into the different things that we're doing. So that could be anywhere from, could be at any one time, could be like there could be 30 core young people right up to sort of like 80 that use the facilities we have or are part of teams that we operate. Yeah, if that answers your question.
If I could maybe rephrase it, in terms of the young people on the Kāpiti coast, would half have had some interaction with Zeal, or would it be less than that, or do you think it would be more?
On the interaction, so like, I guess when we're in the community doing events and they're gathered around our stage trailer, or they're watching our performers, or that level of engagement, I think we would have been quite visible over the last 5 years in the areas where young people might congregate, especially in schools. I mean, we were in Kāpiti College about a month ago, helping them run a karaoke event, and there was there would have been at least 300 young people hanging around with our youth workers, talking to as many of those young people as possible. It's probably an impossible question to answer. Yeah, but I think a lot of young people are aware of Zeal and aware of where we are. I do think though there is perceptions that are unhelpful. Like I have talked to young people who say you can't go to Zeal unless you're creative, which isn't true. You can't go to Zeal unless you're a musician, or I mean, I had a young person that I was quite close with say that they would never go to Zeal because they're not cool enough, and I was just like, no. So there are definitely perceptions that we need to be breaking down. Yeah.
Thank you, Hamish.
So as the Waikanae Ward Councillor, I think Youth and Waikanae have limited facilities up there, but I also note, and it's really great that you actually have invited Year 8s to come to Zeal to look through the facilities, but I actually noted that neither of the two primary schools from Waikanae were listed there, and I'm just wondering whether they're on the agenda further down the line.
Yeah, they've been invited. They were invited last year, they were invited this year, and I literally just received a message from Mr. Campbell from Waikanae that was the same week as their Year 8 camp, so which is really unfortunate. But we also, so I mean, the invitation is there, and if there's, in some of the schools, when I emailed them back and just asked for some feedback around those Year 8 visits, a few of the schools said, it would be really good, like if there was a chance for you to come into the school and interact with the young people in a way to kind of like front load those events. I guess it's interesting. It's difficult because we don't necessarily sit in a space of like going into a school and having the capacity just to entertain young people. I wouldn't call us an entertainment organisation. So it's kind of what do you do when you go into that school, and how do you interact with those young people in a meaningful way? Yeah. But it's definitely something that's churning over in my mind about how we can do that better. Yeah.
Thanks, Hamish and Jesse. So look, I've got a few questions myself, and sort of waiting till the end there. And before I start, I have got an email there from you, which I will take up the offer to catch up over coffee, which will lead partly into the questions that I've got. I thought we'd just wait till today's presentation before we progress with that. The report refers to, actually before I do that, from a personal perspective, I think the work that Zeal does is fantastic. I was there when it was pitched as an idea from the youth. I was there at the opening. I've been at different events, Waitangi Day, where Zeal had a presence there, and numerous other events. I think the work that you do there is fantastic. And I try not to be parochial. I think mostly I'm not, but in this instance I'm going to be, where a part of the specific action for Zeal is that response to Ōtaki. And when the idea was originally mooted, my question to the ward councillor at the time was, well, what about Ōtaki? And the feedback through the surveys was what Ōtaki youth wanted then at the time was activities and events, and not necessarily a place to go. And so as we see in the contract, part of the contract for Zeal is to do those activities. To get to the point, and I guess my question, the report speaks to that focus on Ōtaki and on the page that I'm looking at, which is page 7, year 4 to 6, and then the report goes on further on point 28 to say that there's a focus moving forward on Otaki. And my concern is that we're almost, we're in year 6 now, and so I'd say that's a little too late in the sense of, it's that focus on Otaki. It seems for me that there was some activity there earlier on, and that's dropped off a little bit, even prior to COVID, because I absolutely acknowledge COVID was a challenging time for everybody. And so for me, it's more about wanting to know what you're doing moving forward. I can accept that maybe there might have been, it's a little bit like when you practice a new golf swing. Not that I play golf, you have a little bit of a dip, but I want to see, that real increase in response and effort in the Otaki area. So I'm interested to hear from you how you're going to, or how you propose to try and lift up that response in the Otaki space, because I certainly am concerned, given the contract and what's happening there, notwithstanding the fact that you've got Toi Rangatahi happening at the moment, but would certainly like to see or hear about a bit more. So interested in your thoughts around that one.
It's a space that I need to do a lot more investigation into as well. I don't know, like, from a strategic perspective, like what that might look like. I was up there a couple of weeks ago talking to one of the librarians about possibly kicking off a holiday program that happens within that library space during the holidays as a way to begin interacting with young people who are maybe just at a loose end and are hanging around and being mischievous. So it's just it's little things like that and opportunities that are presented to try and make the most of. Our Toi Rangatahi project, a part of that project is to survey as many young people as we can within those spaces to try and figure out what are the events that they would like to see and what are the things that they want to have happen in their community. So that's an ongoing part of that project. But I guess, like Jesse said, it is definitely a vision. We have a vision to see ourselves in Otaki in a more significant way. And I mean, capacity for us is a really, really big thing to consider as well, with the stuff that we're already, we're doing here in our centre, and with us thinking about how we staff those things. But I think what Jesse said about, it's not about us coming to Otaki and doing all this stuff. It's about figuring out who we can partner with in Otaki to help support and add value to what is already happening. That, I think, for me, is probably the most strategic part of the thinking, is like who are the people in Otaki already doing amazing things, and figuring out how we can add value to what they're doing as an organisation.
Sorry, I'll just add to that. So a challenge when we're engaging with communities that have a higher Māori population is that for it to be transformational in that community, it has to be based on relationship, and relationship takes time, and it's not something that can be fast-tracked. And that's the tension that we have when we're engaging in these communities. And so that's a tension that we hold, and our desire is to hold that well. But off the back of that relationship is where we believe that we'll see longer-term change in that community. This next period for us will be around new strategies for engaging in those partnerships.
Thanks, Jesse. And look, I agree with you. The only thing that I would add to that is, being in year 6 now, the sooner you'd started those relationships, the more quicker and agile you're able to respond. So, Tanya, you wanted to add something to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to also mention that Otaki, being the unique community that it is, the awesome, unique centre of the universe that it is, anybody that's worked in Otaki knows that usually an outsider coming into a community space like that can be time-consuming, hard work. So I just wanted to mention that. And quite often the relationship that community or iwi have is with the individual. And I just wanted to mention that Hamish has started a year ago, and in some senses starting to build those relationships up again on behalf of Zeal. So just wanted to mention that too, which is, as we all know, that, like I said, if you've worked in Otaki, sometimes it's about the relationship and the connection you have as an individual.
Thank you, Tanya, and absolutely agree. Last one was just around the funding aspect. I previously had said, I think it was the advisory board it was referred to for Zeal, and there was a concern around towards the end of the contract, Zeal getting to the point where it's not as reliant on the council funding. That's rapidly approaching, and I'm sure your team are thinking about that. And COVID at the moment would put challenges on, I guess, organisations where you can draw funding from in terms of grants and so forth. So interested in, I guess, in the team's thoughts around that moving forward, because before we know it, we're in year 6 now, it'll be year 9, and there may not be either the money or the appetite then, I couldn't say, to fund the same levels of funding for the organisation. There will be, I don't know. So interested in what the team are thinking about that, the funding aspect.
Yeah, I guess, so COVID it's presented us with a challenge and opportunity, really. So the challenge being that, yeah, you're right, any funding connected to any sort of investment is uncertain. Any funding that isn't attached to contractual obligation is also challenging. The opportunity, though, that we've seen is, which was mentioned at the table, was the COVID response funds. So that's something that we're exploring but that's only going to serve us well for the immediate. So what we're doing as an organisation is we've doubled the time frame in regards to our forecasting to get a true understanding of where our gaps sit. I was actually talking to Hamish yesterday about a partner strategy and having that rolled out over the next 12 to 24 months in regards to engaging with and getting local partners across the line that share that passion with us for young people. And we're also working with board members of ours to increase the possibility of centre income through social enterprise. So there is work happening in that space. We're coordinating that in a sustainable plan over the next few months. But yeah, as you can appreciate, these are challenging times, but we're trying to find those glimmers of hope, of opportunity that do sit there, and we will find them. But yeah, we're thankful that you're coming on this journey with us as we do that.
Thanks, Jesse. Councillor McCann.
Through you, Mr. Chair, what role does Council have in providing that assistance, looking at future funding? And also, I noted earlier in the presentation you talked about needing to redefine that story to connect with other organisations as you look to build those relationships, but also that's equally important when you're trying to build revenue funds.
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
What role does Council have in helping you to create that story or create that momentum to help look at external revenue funds and create the story that you mentioned that you were still working on, and also that's important in creating the connections with other organisations that you mentioned you're working on?
Councillor McCann, can I just check whether you are looking for an answer from the team or from staff?
Either.
Should I try and start us off? So Zeal itself had been tremendous at fundraising anyway. If you look at the building itself, the team fundraised a lot of money to do that and have connections locally as well when going through that process. The next steps are for the next 3-year period is to build a sustainable income plan, which Council will also have a look at, and it will be part of their contract. But part of that too is that our partnership will allow us to support where we can to ensure that things are joined up the best way. And that has been successful in the last 4 or 5 years. So we are planning to just continue on that process. But it will really come down to the sustainable income planning that's going to be developed or starts to be developed, and is a contractual obligation as well, if that makes sense. yes.
Thank you. I don't see any further questions. Thanks, guys, for speaking to us today, and maybe we'll just move back to the more formal part of the paper. I'll just check whether there's any questions in regards to the paper itself from elected members, and then we'll move to the recommendations. So I've just got a question myself in terms of before we get to that. So you guys are welcome to sit down if you want to. Yeah. So just before we move to the recommendations, team, we've got a couple of partially achieved there, and I'm just wondering in terms of the recommendations, I hadn't sort of done anything there myself in terms of, well, I'd knocked up a little bit, but around some specific wording, maybe a 50 just along the lines of that the committee notes the partially achieved responses, particularly in relation to Otaki, and I was just looking for some wording there around, I guess, staff continuing to monitor the situation with Zeal to ensure, I guess next time around that's achieved. Would it be appropriate to have something along the lines of that? Because I think it's a little bit remiss to accept the report, noting it, without actually speaking or responding to, from a performance perspective, the partially achieved. So I'm just looking at my colleagues around the table. That's a personal view. Right. So on that, and I'm sorry, Grayson and Tanika, I hadn't had any wording. I just wanted to test that with staff. But if we could maybe look at if it makes it easy, if I move recommendation 49 and a new recommendation 50, that the Strategy and Operations Committee notes the partial or partially achieved responses, particularly to Otaki, and requests that staff monitor the situation ongoing to ensure outcomes are achieved. Is that eloquent enough? Or whether it is monitored or works with Zeal, works with, I think it probably sounds a bit more teamwork. So rather than monitors, works with Zeal. So if I could have a seconder for that. Seconded by Councillor Elliott. Open it up for debate. Councillor Pravanov.
I actually had a question, Mr. Chair.
Okay, question, Councillor Pravanov.
Yes, so just following up on your question, Mr. Chair. So it's great that a number of the objectives have been achieved, but I'm just wondering if you could actually please, just give a bit more understanding of what the word achieved mean, whether that's just over the line or whether that's doing a really good job. Whether if that was the only, is either achieve or not achieve or partially achieved. Thank you.
That's a really good question. It's basically almost a yes or no. So how we've done it is that we have looked at the report. It's kind of not graded. It's more of a yes, they've reached the outcomes. And there's within the contract, there's actually a list of deliverables and outputs that are measured. And it's quite a lengthy document. And I guess it's just around if one of those things isn't achieved that we consider a little bit significant, that we'd put it in as partially achieved, if that makes sense. So the documentation itself and the contract has a table of running outcomes and outputs and deliverables. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just confused. I have nothing against the recommendations, but wouldn't recommendation 50 sort of be confusing? Recommendation 49, but if everyone is happy.
Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just confused. I have nothing against the recommendations, but wouldn't recommendation 50 sort of be confusing? Recommendation 49, but if everyone is happy.
Councillor Randall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just confused. I have nothing against the recommendation.
We're in a loop.
So
we're just going to fix that loop.
Sort of be confusing. Recommendation 49, but if everyone is